Hey guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is all about how to study for the outpatient medical coding setting. If you're brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue, I'm a medical coder. Okay guys, so Monday night I did an episode about how to study for inpatient medical coding. Inpatient meaning working with ICD-10 PCS, not referring to outpatient or professional fee at all, but using the ICD-10 PCS and things like that. Tonight is the outpatient side. So I'm going to show you some of the books that I have always recommended. Some of these books are a few years old. I just want to put out this part first. You can use older workbooks to work with. The only thing and the only difference between the current 2023 editions and some of the older ones is some of the codes may have updated, all right? And because of this, maybe sometimes your answers are not going to match the book. But if you can see that your code is actually not in the answer key at all, it doesn't even exist, then you know that that's been an updated code. And so you're able to find out, what is the the latest and greatest. So it is okay to use these. Often they are the same questions literally from years ago, but again, they've had updated codes in some of them. Not all the codes are updated. So just keep that in mind, just to kind of save yourself a few bucks. And this is important because when it comes to this field and working in it, it's going to get expensive quick. So the best way to kind of manage your money when it comes to how much you're spending, because it can go quite high quite quickly, is to look for those ways of saving money. And using an older workbook doesn't hurt, So all of the books that I have always recommended, all of the anatomy and medical terminology books and things that I recommend, they're all in the description box below. Guys, please look in the description box. I get so many questions from folks asking me, where do I start? And what books do I need? It's literally in the description box below. So save yourself some time and look in the description box so that way you can see all the books and everything that I recommend. So I'm going to show you these, but also this. I do have a video out about how to set up a study schedule. And that's something that I didn't mention on the inpatient video. But I'm going to leave it in the description box, so that way if you guys want to check it out, you should do so. When you study, it's important that you study for no more than 1 hour at a time. Because as adults, when we tend to have all of these things that we have to do, studying for long stretches of time is not going to help us. It's actually going to do the opposite. And what happens when you study for long stretches of time, you get fatigued and your brain does not retain information like it would if you were only studying in shorter spans of time. So an hour is a good enough time to get into a subject and then to work it and then stop. This way it'll give you time to take a break, grab a snack, go say hi to your family, and then that way you can go back to studying after you've had a break. It's very important. Everything that we have to know in medical coding is so much. And we have to know what doctors know while never having gone to medical school. It is true, guys. And so it takes time. And I don't say these things to overwhelm you guys. Please don't be overwhelmed, because I want you guys to be prepared when you're studying, or whether you're getting out in the real world. When you are getting ready to study, it's important that you have a good action plan so that you don't run into the scaries of, I don't want to do this anymore because it's too much. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to show you the books that I recommend. Now, when you're studying for the outpatient setting, now this covers, of course, the CCS. The CCS is the gold standard of medical coding credentials. It covers inpatient and outpatient coding, so this applies to you if you're studying for this. Same thing with the CCA, the Certified Coding Associate. This also applies to you because inpatient and outpatient are covered on the CCA. If you are studying for the Ccs-P, the Certified Coding Specialist Physician-Based, that's the outpatient medical coding credential with the American Health Information Management Association. This also applies to you. If you are studying for the CPC, that is the credential with the American Academy of Professional Coders. That is all outpatient coding. This video is for you. So when you are studying for outpatient, It's important to know, obviously, how to use the procedures book, right? The CPT, current procedure terminology manual, but it's also important to know how to code your diagnoses. In the outpatient setting, we code only things that are definitive. If the doctor does not have a definitive diagnosis, we know we're going to pick up the symptoms, or what we do know that does apply, right? So that's something you got to keep in mind. The rules are going to be different. Now, there are the ICD-10-CM coding guidelines that are in the front of every ICD-10-CM book. That tells you a lot about the outpatient setting. It also does cover the inpatient setting in section 2. But if you are, just studying for the outpatient side, just know that, okay? The outpatient setting. This book covers ICD-10-CM and ICD-10-PCS. If you are not studying for inpatient coding, it is okay to use this book to study for your diagnosis side, because this book is an excellent book. It's from the American Hospital Association. The author is right here in the front. But it does cover diagnosis coding. So if you need help diagnosis coding, maybe you're struggling looking up some of those combination codes and things like that, this book is a great resource. It is not just, it's only for the inpatient side. Not true. I recommend this book for studying diagnosis coding as well. You can skip the PCS portion of this and only use the ICD-10-CM part, right? And use your ICD-10-CM book. So this is what I recommend for studying the diagnosis coding, okay? So it's very good. It's got a lot of good practices in it as well. This is a CPC study guide. Now, this is the book that you need to use to help you practice for the CPT side of the house, right? Using the CPT manual. This is going to be your best friend. Yes, I am all the way with the HEMA, but I will hand it to AAPC. They did a fantastic job on this book. This book is covering every single chapter of the CPT manual, okay? It covers everything. And working through these is critical because they give a lot of really good op notes, and they give a lot of good scenarios and things like that. So it's very good practice. It doesn't look big, so it's not intimidating, but it is a very good book if you are trying to learn that outpatient medical coding. And I recommend this book even if you are sitting for the CCS, the CCA, or the Ccs-P, because of the simple fact that we all use the same CPT manual. Just because this has AAPC on it doesn't mean that if you're sitting for an AHEMA exam that you can't still use it. Guys, we all use the same CPT manual. This is just a different brand of book, so that's something that you got to know. I do not recommend the AHEMA exam prep books. A lot of people complain that those questions that are in those prep books are not on the exam because they're not supposed to be. So this is what I would recommend if you're studying for the exam. Well, Blue, how do I get practice for the exam stuff? Guys, the best thing that you can do is look at the domains, right? And see everything, all the subjects that are covered on that exam. So that way okay, well, I know I need to study this for this particular test, or that for this particular test. So do that, so that way you can fill in the gaps. But when it comes to studying for the CPT side, right, this is what you want to study with. Now, I recommend this. This is what helped me. Now, I did take the Ccs-P in 2021, and after many years of having the CCA, but I did take the Ccs-P then. I use this one to kind of go over some of the topics that I don't always code for, right? Because I primarily code in the orthopedic and podiatry settings. I've done many a setting before. So this helped me to kind of brush up on some of the subjects, again, that I don't always go through. So it's a very good book. It does have the answers in it. Some of the answers I kind of disagree with, but for the most part, this is a fantastic book. It's very straightforward. It's very easy to use, very beginner friendly. There are many different publishers out there that have different ways of explaining things, but when it comes to actually explaining things in a very straightforward manner, which I like things that are straightforward. This is easy, okay, and a lot of people can understand this. that's your best bet. Okay, so that's what I would recommend. Again, if you're studying for the CCS, the CCA, Ccs-P, or the CPC, naturally. But make sure you work through that whole thing. This is your workbook. This you can write in. So write in, scribble in, highlight, do anything that you want to it. But keep your writing to this, because this is a workbook, all right? Now I say this because I always recommend that when you're working with your CPT manual, which this is a CPT manual, okay? You will need this, obviously not the 2022, you're gonna need the, well, if you're with the HEMA, you could still use the 2022 CPT by the AMA until the end of April. Beginning of May is when it switches over to the 2023 editions. But in the meantime, if you are going to study and you're going to take your test later in the year and you just want to use this, that's fine. Notice that my book is clean. I don't have tabs on my CPT manual. And I don't have tabs on my CPT manual because it's very easy for these pages to tear. Now, AHEMA used to be really strict about having tabs on their books, and they're really strict about writing. But they do say now that you can use the tabs that came with the original book. The AMA does have tabs that come with this book. Of course, you see mine is not tabbed up. I don't believe in tabs, guys. I think that if you are practicing sufficiently, you will not need the tabs. And there's a lot of people that panic and think that they need them. I am a veteran medical coder who has never used tabs. Not even when I took my first exam, my CCA, back in 2008. I did not use tabs, and I did not have any medical experience before then either, because that's just the way it was back then, and I've been conditioned to that ever since then. I am also a book lover. So I do not believe in writing in books. These books are written by doctors and other scholars. It does not need you to add anything to it. What you need to do, and what would be your best bet, is to learn it, learn how to use it, and learn where everything is. So I do recommend taking a weekend to open your book and flip every single page. You don't have to read everything, but at least you'll know that you've already been through the entire book. You know where everything is, you know where your appendixes are and what they cover. Knowing where those appendixes are in here is really key, because it's going to help you, because it has examples for E&M levels, and it does have examples for your modifiers. Modifiers is another key part of knowing that outpatient setting. People ask me all the time, well, how do I study? Opening your book, guys, so that way you can look in and see and take everything in. And doing that, again, you won't have to sit here and worry about circling and doing all this highlighting and stuff, because when I see books that are all highlighted and written in and everything like that, why aren't you trusting the book? You have to trust the book. And there's people that think that they need to do this. Guys, it's an open book test. It is an open book test. So know where everything is. Keep your writing off of the book, because you don't have to add anything to it. It's a very comprehensive, wonderful book that does not need you to add anything to it. Learn to use the book. Take the time to go through it, so that way you can become faster. Especially with the CCS exam, it's 51.9% of the total exam is your medical coding knowledge. That means your ability to be able to use these books and know where everything is and find codes. So that is very important for you to know. Get familiar with your book, so that way you can be ready and you won't have to feel those feelings of uncertainty and like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Because what gives us fear? What makes us anxious? The unknown, right? So when we take the time to learn these things in the CPT manual, right, we'll know, okay, where can we find reference about evaluation and management? That is a big part of the outpatient setting. And that's the thing that scares a lot of people. And I'm here to tell you guys that evaluation and management is not as scary as you all are making it out to be. Because sometimes it's not even the person has even had a chance to study evaluation and management yet, and they are already panicking because somebody else told them that it's hard. Evaluation and management is not hard, guys. It's not. I'm gonna let y'all know that right now. It is not. You know what the key to evaluation and management is? Understanding, literally understanding the risk tool. Once you understand that risk tool, the table of risk, when you really understand that, that's your base right there. That's your foundational knowledge. Okay. And then you can start learning about, low and detailed and moderate and, all these complex and things like that. You're going to understand what that means. You're going to be able to put it together once you understand that table of risk. Okay. There's a lot of things to evaluation and management, but really starting there is your key. Now, I do have a Patreon channel, and on Patreon, I do have a once-a-month study hall, and I'm going to be covering that risk tool for evaluation and management this month, and we have it once a month on a Saturday. The next one will be on January 21st at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, so 1 p.m. On the West Coast and 4 p.m. on the East Coast. But it's once a month on Zoom. It's live with me. You'll be able to ask questions and we can review this. So if you're interested, my link for Patreon is in the description box below if you want to join. But that's just one part of learning evaluation and management. And again, there are examples in the CPT manual, all right? And a lot of people don't know this. Every time I bring this up, a lot of people say, well, I didn't know that. Take the time to know your appendixes in the back, guys. And then even on your flaps when you open up the book, right? You can see that there's a lot of information. There's a whole list of all of the modifiers. And in the back, there's a whole list of abbreviations as well. And you have like anatomy pictures in there and everything else. So it's a good way to know, okay, this book has reference. If I learn to trust the book, if I learn to use the book, then I won't feel all those feelings of anxiety because number one, I know how to look up codes. And number two, I'll know where to find things. Okay. So that's very important when you're studying for the outpatient setting. Your tools that you use are really big when it comes to study. Okay. So not all publishers are created equally. I will say that too. I am not a paid sponsor of, or I'm not being sponsored by Optum360 Coding. But I will say this, when it comes to books and books that I trust, books that I love, Optum360 Coding is where it's at. So when you get, or if you decide to get your books through Optum360 Coding, this is a 2023 version, by the way, all of their books, of their ICD-10-CM books, in the beginning of every chapter, it does have a like examples of how the diagnosis codes apply, right? So it's got all kinds of scenarios, and then it's got the answers, and then it's got the rationale, and it tells you why. So maybe if you're struggling with a particular subject for diagnosis coding, again, this is your reference book. Intelligent and really, really just people who love the field are the ones who write these things. So it will help you to understand. So take the time again to go through your diagnosis book and be able to say, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Walk through it, all right? But that's going to help you to learn your diagnosis coding. And again, that diagnosis coding is so important. And again, in the front of the ICD-10-CM book, there's the coding guidelines. Now, I've challenged people, I did the October challenge last year about reading the coding guidelines once per week in their entirety, guys. And it may seem like it's a lot, and it's like 36 pages or something like that, but it's front and back, so it's like 70 something pages. But if you read those guidelines, it's going to help you better understand what it means to code. You can't just want to get into coding and then, oh, I don't want to have to look up all these diagnoses. I just want to get to the op notes and things like that, or I want to get to evaluation and management examples so that I can just dive on in. If you don't know how to look up diagnosis codes, if you don't know how to look up procedure codes, it's not going to make sense to you anyway. Because when it comes to spotting diagnoses, the more practice you have looking up diagnoses, the better off that you'll be. So that's something that I want you all to think about when you're out there and you're just wondering, like, how do I start? Hopefully you're taking my advice from this video, because these were the things that I did. Because even still, like now, when I have questions about like, okay, how do these codes apply? I will look at my ICD-10-CM book, of course, the one by Optum 360 Coding, and I will find those examples, and that helps me to learn. And again, same thing with the CPT. When I get stuck on evaluation and management, like kind of riding the fence, I look at those examples in the back. Now, the examples that are in the back of the CPT manual by the AMA, they're the ones that are covering for like, what is it, for the emergency room. There's a few other settings that it's covering as well. So you should have to look in the back, and that kind of gives you an idea about like what that kind of level would constitute, right? It's not going to give you like a whole big old thing, but it's going to give you a little snippet. So that way you can see, oh, okay, kind of like put those things together. So don't worry about evaluation and management if that's what has you panicking. It's not that bad, guys. And it's not the enemy, certainly not. It is really, it's not, I'm not going to say it's easy, because nothing is really easy in this field, but it is, you can pick it up after a while, okay? You just have to know not to be afraid of it. Because if your automatic thinking in the beginning is, I'm going to be afraid, it's going to scare you, because you're showing it fear. And the more that you do that, the more it's going to, you know, compound and fester, and then all of a sudden you don't want to do it. There's a lot of medical coders that are that way, guys. Don't do that to yourselves, because you have to learn to step up to the plate and meet that challenge. If you need a tutor or a mentor, there's a ton of them on LinkedIn. You can reach out, try to find recommendations for a tutor. I'm a tutor myself. My rate is in the description box below. Sometimes we need that. We need somebody to explain things to us, so that way, like one-on-one, to kind of help us get through that rut. Because sometimes it doesn't always happen that way in school. Sometimes people are cattle herded really fast through school, and it's just not conducive to really good learning. So we have to take the bull by the horns and do our own thing, right? And we have to learn to teach ourselves. And that's one of the things that when you are getting stuck, you have to be the one to speak up, okay? So again, get with those books. Make sure you open all of them. Take the time to look at them. Don't worry about cluttering it up with writing or highlighting or, heaven forbid, circling. Because I've heard of the one where you circle the whole section for the whatever the codes. Guys, don't do that. It's just so much clutter on the page. And if you know how to look up the codes, you're not going to need that circling, guys. It's just going to get in the way, and it's going to be making you more anxious when you're looking at the page. So keep a clean book. If you've already been writing in it, guys, and you think, oh gosh, I shouldn't have written in it, it's done now. But if you haven't started yet, keep them clean. That's your challenge, is to keep them clean. Because again, working with a clean book is going to be a lot easier to work with, and keeping those tabs off of these books is another good thing too. If you don't believe me, check the candidate hand guide for the AHIMA exams, all right? I know AAPC likes their writing and tabbing and stuff, and that's fine, but I'm telling you, if you're sitting for an AHIMA exam, make sure you look at that candidate hand guide. I'm just saying. So with all that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. But yes, that's how you study for the outpatient setting. That's the book that I recommend, that AAPC CPC study guide. That's the one I recommend for studying the CPT portion. Again, that's good for the CCA, CCS, Ccs-P, and obviously the CPC. It's good for all of those, but it's going to help you. Trust me, that's a very good and straightforward book, and that's what I love about them. And like I said, if a book is good, I don't care who wrote it. I will talk very well about it, which I always have. So those links for those books are in the description box below if you're interested. So I'm going to wrap this one up. Thanks again, guys, for joining me. I hope to see you again on the next one, and I will see you guys on the next time. Bye.